When my wife died, I called my parents. They said they were too busy celebrating my sister's birthday. Days later, they showed up demanding her inheritance. My 8-year-old handed them an envelope. Hear what you really came for. When they read it, they went pale. My parents showed up at my door exactly 19 days after I buried my wife, and the first words out of my father's mouth were, "We need to discuss your financial situation." Not, "How are you holding up?" Not, "How's Emma?" Not even a pretense of caring about the 8-year-old girl who just lost her mother. Just money. I stood there in the doorway at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, still wearing the same Georgetown hoodie I'd slept in for 3 nights because it was the last thing Sarah had washed before she died, and I watched my father, Richard Hayes, successful financial advisor, country club member, man who'd taught me to ride a bike and throw a baseball, look past me into the house like he was assessing its value. "Your financial situation?" I repeated, my brain struggling to process the words. My mother, Patricia, stepped forward with that smile she used on difficult clients, the one that was supposed to look sympathetic but just looked practiced. "Marcus, sweetie, we know this is hard, but we need to talk about Sarah's life insurance policy. Your father's retirement portfolio took a hit last quarter, and with inflation—" "Stop!" The word came out harder than I meant. "Emma's at school. Come inside." They walked into my living room, the living room where Sarah and I had picked out every piece of furniture together, where we'd spent Sunday mornings doing crossword puzzles while Emma played with her dolls, where 3 weeks ago I'd collapsed on the floor sobbing when I came home from the hospital without my wife, and they sat on the couch like they were here for a business meeting, which I was about to learn they were. I'm Marcus Hayes, 34 years old, and 23 days ago my wife Sarah died in the cereal aisle of a Safeway at 4:17 p.m. on a Thursday. Brain aneurysm. No warning, no symptoms, no chance to say goodbye. 1 minute she was texting me a photo of Lucky Charms asking, "Do we let Emma have these, or are we still pretending to be health-conscious parents?" And the next minute a stranger was calling 911 because a woman had collapsed and wasn't breathing. I'd been in a meeting, a stupid, pointless meeting about Q3 projections that absolutely could have been an email. My phone was on silent. By the time I saw the missed calls from an unknown number and the voicemail from Mercy General Hospital, Sarah had been gone for 47 minutes. The doctor, Dr. Patricia Chen, 28 years in emergency medicine, with kind eyes that had delivered this news too many times, told me that Sarah had died instantly, that she hadn't suffered, that there was nothing anyone could have done, like that was supposed to make it better, like it was supposed to matter that my wife of 9 years, the mother of my daughter, the person who made me laugh every single day, hadn't suffered in the 60 seconds between texting me about cereal and ceasing to exist. I'd called my parents from the hospital. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. My mother answered on the 4th ring with laughter and music and the clinking of glasses in the background. "Marcus, honey, we're at Rebecca's 40th birthday dinner. Can this wait until tomorrow?" My sister, of course. Rebecca, the golden child, was celebrating a milestone birthday at some expensive restaurant downtown with 40 of her closest friends. "Mom, Sarah just died. I'm at the hospital. I need—" A pause. The background noise got quieter, like she'd moved to somewhere more private. "Oh my God. Marcus, that's awful. But sweetheart, everyone's here. The caterers just brought out the cake. It's the one from that bakery Rebecca's been talking about for months. We'll come by first thing tomorrow morning, I promise." "Mom, Sarah is dead. Emma doesn't know yet. I need you tomorrow, honey. I promise. First thing." She hung up. They never came. Sarah and I had met in college, both of us working the night shift at the campus library to help pay tuition. She was pre-med, planning to become a pediatrician. I was studying accounting because my father insisted I needed a practical career. She'd caught me reading Terry Pratchett novels when I was supposed to be studying, and instead of judging me, she'd pulled out her own worn copy of Good Omens and said, "If you haven't read this one yet, we need to be friends immediately." We were engaged 8 months later. My parents had complained about the timeline. "You barely know her," my mother said. Like 9 months wasn't enough to know I wanted to spend my life with someone. They'd also complained about the wedding cost. Sarah's parents were paying for half, which meant I was expected to pay for the other half myself, since my parents had already invested so much in my education. Sarah had switched from pre-med to nursing after her clinical rotations. "I don't want to diagnose," she'd told me. "I want to care. I want to be the person holding a scared kid's hand while they get an IV, not the person ordering the IV." She'd specialized in pediatric oncology, spent her days with the bravest kids I'd ever known, fighting cancers that had no business existing in 8-year-old bodies, and she'd brought that same fierce, protective love home to Emma, our daughter, born exactly 2 years after we married, who had Sarah's dark hair and my terrible habit of making dad jokes. Sarah had made Emma laugh every single day. Even on the hard days, even when work had been brutal and she'd come home crying about a patient she couldn't save, she'd still find a way to make Emma giggle before bedtime. And now she was gone, just gone, like someone had erased her from the world while I was sitting in a pointless meeting. The funeral had been on Saturday, 4 days after she died. My parents showed up 23 minutes late, wearing golf golf clothes, actual golf clothes, like they'd been playing 9 holes, and had done me the incredible favor of stopping by before finishing their round. Rebecca had spent half the service on her phone, texting. I'd seen her screen when she got up to use the bathroom. She was coordinating a dinner reservation for the following weekend. During the reception at Sarah's parents' house, they'd insisted on hosting because Marcus has enough to deal with. My father had pulled me aside in the kitchen and asked if I'd filed the life insurance claim yet. It's important to handle these things quickly, he'd said, like Sarah was a business transaction that needed to be closed out efficiently. The paperwork can be complicated. I can help if you need it. I'd walked away without responding. Meanwhile, Sarah's parents, Jim and Carol Peterson, who'd driven 12 hours from Ohio despite Jim having had knee surgery just 2 weeks earlier, held Emma when she sobbed. They stayed at our house for a full week, cooking meals I couldn't eat and making sure Emma got to school and had her homework done and knew that she was loved. The contrast was so stark it physically hurt. Now, 19 days after burying my wife, my parents sat on the couch Sarah had saved 6 months to buy, putting away $200 from every paycheck until she had enough for the sectional she'd wanted since we'd moved into this house. And my father opened a leather portfolio that I recognized as the one he used for client presentations. We've done some research, he began, pulling out a printed spreadsheet. Sarah's life insurance policy through the hospital is $750,000. That's a substantial amount, and we think it's important to discuss allocation. My mouth went dry. Allocation? Your mother and I have been discussing this, my father continued, his tone reasonable, like we were negotiating a contract. We raised you, put you through college, paid for half your wedding. No, you didn't. Sarah's parents paid for half. I paid for the other half with student loans I'm still paying off. He waved this away like it was irrelevant. We provided you with a foundation, an education, a stable childhood. We deserve consideration in this situation. Consideration. The word felt foreign in my mouth. My mother leaned forward, and I saw something calculating in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. Or maybe I'd just never wanted to see it. Marcus, your father's 401k took a significant hit last quarter. We're looking at a retirement that's not nearly as comfortable as we'd planned. And with inflation, healthcare costs, you want Sarah's life insurance money. We think it's only fair that you share it with family, my father said, like this was a reasonable request. We were thinking 50% would go a long way towards securing our future. The room tilted. I grabbed the arm of the chair I was sitting in to steady myself. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want $375,000 of my dead wife's life insurance policy. The policy that's meant to help me raise our daughter alone. The policy that's supposed to cover Emma's future, her education, her— Don't be emotional about this, my father interrupted. It's just finances. You'll still have plenty left over. Emotional? Sarah died 3 weeks ago. Emma lost her mother. And you're sitting here with a fucking spreadsheet asking for half of the only financial security we have left? My mother's face hardened in that way it did when she didn't get what she wanted. Don't be selfish, Marcus. Family takes care of family. That's what we do. Where were you when Sarah died? The question came out quiet, dangerous. I called you from the hospital. I told you my wife was dead, and you said you were too busy at Rebecca's birthday party. We had plans. Where were you the next day? You promised you'd come by. You never showed up. I had to tell Emma her mother was dead by myself. She was 7 years old, and I had to find words to explain why Mommy wasn't coming home, and you couldn't be bothered to drive 40 minutes to help. We've been busy. Where were you at the funeral? You showed up late in golf clothes. Rebecca was on her phone the entire time. You didn't hug Emma. You didn't ask if she was okay. Dad, you pulled me aside to talk about insurance paperwork. At my wife's funeral, my father's jaw tightened. We're here now, and we're trying to have an adult conversation about finances. If you can't handle that, get out. Marcus, get the fuck out of my house. They didn't move. My mother opened her mouth to say something, probably something about me being ungrateful or dramatic or emotional, but before she could speak, I heard the front door open. Emma was home. Emma Hayes, 8 years old, 2nd grade, who loved dinosaurs and hated broccoli, and still slept with the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her as a baby, who'd been doing so well in school until 3 weeks ago when her world imploded, who'd had a panic attack in Mrs. Rodriguez's class this morning. I'd gotten the call from the school counselor, but I'd been too distracted by my parents' visit to check my voicemail. She walked into the living room carrying her frozen backpack, her eyes red from crying, and she saw her grandparents sitting on the couch with their leather portfolio and printed spreadsheet. Grammy? Papa? Her voice was so small. Are you here to see me? My mother forced a smile. Hi, sweetie. We're just talking to your daddy about some grown-up things. Why don't you go play in your room? Emma stood there for a long moment, looking at them with an expression that was far too knowing for an 8-year-old. Are you asking for Mommy's money? The room went silent. My father started to close his portfolio. Emma, honey, this is adult business. You didn't come when Mommy died, Emma said, and I heard Sarah in her voice, that same quiet strength my wife had when she was dealing with difficult parents of her pediatric patients. Daddy called you and you said you were too busy. You said you'd come the next day, but you never came. Emma, sweetheart, my mother began. You didn't hug Daddy at the funeral. You didn't hug me. You were late, and you were on your phones, and Papa asked about money. Emma's hands hands were shaking, clutching her backpack straps. But you came today. You came for money. That's not, my father started. I'm going to get something. Emma turned and walked toward her room. My parents looked at me. My father's face was red. My mother looked like she was trying to decide between embarrassment and anger. You turned our granddaughter against us, my mother hissed. I haven't said a word to her about this, I replied. She figured you out all by herself. Emma returned 37 seconds later. She was carrying a manila envelope, the kind I kept in my desk drawer for tax documents. She walked directly to my father and held it out. Here, she said, this is what you really came for. My father took it, confused. He opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper. Emma's careful second-grade handwriting covered most of the page, and I could see she'd used a ruler to keep the lines straight. She'd been practicing her cursive. This must have taken her hours. My father pulled out the paper and began reading aloud, his voice getting quieter with each line. Dear Grammy and Papa, you can't have Mommy's money. It is for me and Daddy because Mommy wanted to take care of us. Mommy told me before she died that real family shows up when things are hard, not just when things are easy. She said some people wear masks and pretend to love you, but really they only care about what they can get from you. You didn't show up when Mommy died. You said you were too busy at Aunt Rebecca's party. Daddy cried by himself because you didn't come help. You didn't show up the next day even though you promised. Daddy had to tell me Mommy was gone all by himself. You showed up at the funeral late and Papa talked about money. Aunt Rebecca was on her phone. You didn't ask if I was sad, but you showed up today for money. Mommy said I would know who really loved me by who stayed when things got scary. You didn't stay. You only came back when there was money to get. Please don't come back until you love us more than dollars. Love, Emma. The paper shook in my father's hands. My mother had gone completely pale. How dare you? My father started, looking at me. How dare you manipulate her into... I didn't write that, I said quietly. I didn't know about it until 30 seconds ago. She's 8 years old and she figured out what you are entirely by herself. Emma stepped closer to me and I put my hand on her shoulder. Mommy talked to me a lot before she died, Emma said, and I realized she was talking about the conversations she'd had with Sarah over the years, not some deathbed prophecy. She said some people only show up when there's something to gain. She said that's not love, that's just using people. My mother stood up abruptly, her face flushed with humiliation more than shame. We should leave. You should, I agreed. My father grabbed his portfolio, the spreadsheet, trying to salvage some dignity. His hands were shaking. You're making a terrible mistake, Marcus. Family is supposed to show up when someone dies, Emma interrupted. Her voice didn't waver. You didn't. They walked toward the door. My mother was crying now, but not from guilt, from embarrassment at being called out by an 8-year-old, from the shock of being seen clearly for what they were. At the door, my father turned back one more time. That money is Sarah's. Sarah wanted to take care of Emma, I said. That's what the policy is for. That's what it will do. This isn't over? Yes, it is. I put both hands on Emma's shoulders. Don't contact us again unless you're ready to be actual family, and I'm not sure you know how. They left. I watched through the window as they got into my father's Mercedes, the one he'd bought last year, the one he'd told me cost more than my first house, and drove away. The house was quiet for a long moment. Then Emma looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. Did I do okay, Daddy? Would Mommy be proud? I knelt down and pulled her into my arms, held her while she cried. Mommy would be so incredibly proud, and so am I. I wrote it last night, she whispered against my shoulder. I heard you on the phone with Grammy yesterday, and she said they wanted to discuss finances, and I knew they were coming for Mommy's money. How did you know? Because they didn't come for us. They only ever come when they want something. She pulled back, looked at me with eyes that were far too wise. Papa always asks you about your job and your house and how much things cost. Grammy always talks about what she needs money for, but they never just come to see us. Not ever. She was right. I thought back over the past few years. My parents visited maybe 3 times a year, always when they needed something, help setting up their new TV, advice on their taxes, someone to watch their house while they vacationed. They'd never just shown up to spend time with Emma, never taken her to the park or to movies or to anywhere. Mommy saw it, Emma continued. She told me once that Grammy and Papa loved themselves more than they loved other people. She said it was sad, but it was true. And she said, I should always remember that real love is about showing up, not about what you can get. I'd thought about reaching out to an attorney after they left, getting something formal in place to protect Emma's inheritance. But a week later, I got a letter from my parents' lawyer, Robert Chen, Esquire, Henderson and Associates, 23 years practicing family law. The letter informed me that my parents were contesting the life insurance beneficiary designation and believed they were entitled to fair compensation for their years of financial and emotional investment in me. I called Sarah's best friend, Jennifer Wu, who happened to be an estate planning attorney with Morrison and Hall. She'd been at the funeral, had held me while I cried, had promised Sarah years ago that she'd look out for us if anything ever happened. Marcus, this is insane, she said after I read her the letter. They have no legal standing. Sarah's life insurance policy lists you and Emma as beneficiaries. Unless they can prove undue influence or fraud, which they can't. They have no case. Can they tie it up in court? Keep me from accessing the funds while they sue? They can try. It would be thrown out eventually, but it could take months. She paused. Forward me that letter. And Marcus, I'm going to make sure this doesn't just go away quietly. What they're doing is predatory and disgusting. I sent her the letter along with Emma's note. Sent her the voicemail from the night Sarah died, where my mother said she was too busy at a party. Sent her everything. Jennifer called me back 4 hours later. I filed a formal response and a motion to sanction their attorney for bringing a frivolous suit. I've also sent copies of Emma's letter and your documentation to the judge assigned to the case, Judge Patricia Morrison, 31 years on the bench, known for not tolerating this kind of family exploitation. But Marcus, there's something else. What? I sent everything to my friend who runs a legal ethics blog. It went up an hour ago. It's getting a lot of attention. The story hit social media that night. Parents sue grieving widower and orphaned granddaughter for dead mother's life insurance. By morning, it had 4.7 million views. The comments were savage. This is one of the most disgusting things I've ever read. That little girl lost her mother and her grandparents sued her for the insurance money. The fact that an 8-year-old had to write them a letter explaining why they're horrible people. I'm crying. Please don't come back until you love us more than dollars. That child is wiser than most adults. I hope they lose everything, not just the lawsuit. Everything. My parents tried to do damage control. My mother posted on Facebook that they were heartbroken by the misunderstanding and that they'd only wanted to help Marcus during this difficult time. The comments on her post were so brutal, she deleted her account within hours. Rebecca posted a long Instagram story defending them, talking about how family dynamics are complicated and nobody knows what really happened. Someone found her posts from the day of Sarah's funeral, photos from a brunch she'd gone to after the service, laughing with friends, with captions like "back to normal life" / Sunday vibes. She deleted her Instagram too. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. Judge Morrison reviewed the case for exactly 11 minutes before rendering her decision. This is one of the most appalling attempts to exploit grief I've seen in 3 decades on the bench, she said, looking directly at my parents and their attorney. The plaintiffs have no legal standing whatsoever. The life insurance policy clearly designates Mr. Hayes and his minor daughter as beneficiaries. The attempt to claim entitlement based on financial and emotional investment in raising their own child is both legally baseless and morally repugnant. She turned to Robert Chen. Mr. Chen, I'm sanctioning you and your clients for bringing this frivolous suit. You will pay all of Mr. Hayes' legal fees, plus an additional $15,000 penalty. If you ever bring a case this baseless into my courtroom again, I'll report you to the state bar. My parents tried to leave the courtroom quickly, but reporters were waiting outside. Someone had tipped off the media. The footage of them trying to avoid questions went viral. Another 3.2 million views. The local news picked it up, then national news. My parents became the faces of familial greed, the cautionary tale about what happens when people value money over relationships. My father's financial planning practice lost 17 clients in 2 weeks. My mother got asked to step down from the hospital foundation board she'd been on for 8 years. Rebecca's employer, a PR firm, ironically, mutually agreed to part ways with her after the scandal. I felt nothing watching them face consequences. No satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. 6 months later, Emma and I went to therapy together. Dr. Sarah Kim, child psychologist, 14 years specializing in grief counseling. She helped Emma process losing her mother, helped me process being a single father, helped both of us understand that family isn't about blood, it's about who shows up. Sarah's parents visited every other weekend, making the 12-hour drive from Ohio because they loved Emma and wanted to be part of her life. They never asked about the insurance money, never asked about the lawsuit, just showed up to be grandparents. Jennifer Wu became Emma's godmother officially, helped me set up a trust for Emma's future, helped me navigate estate planning, helped me understand all the things Sarah and I had never gotten around to discussing because we'd thought we had time. And Emma? She kept Sarah's memory alive in 1,000 small ways. Made me pancakes every Sunday morning because that's what mommy did. Told jokes at dinner that were terrible, but made me laugh because they sounded exactly like something Sarah would have said. Started a memory book filled with photos and stories and the little details we didn't want to forget. She also kept that letter, the one she'd given my parents. She kept it in a folder with important papers written on the front in her careful handwriting. Why do you keep it? I asked her once. Because mommy was right, she said simply. People show you who they are, and I want to remember who showed up and who didn't. My parents tried to reach out exactly once, 7 months after the lawsuit. A letter arrived, handwritten by my mother, talking about how they'd made mistakes and wanted to rebuild our relationship. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of showing up for money and not for grief, just vague language about mistakes and moving forward. Emma read it over my shoulder. Are you going to answer? I don't know. What do you think? She thought about it for a long moment. I think mommy would say that people deserve second chances if they really change, but they have to change first. They have to show up because they love us, not because they want something. How will we know the difference? We'll know, she said confidently. Real love looks different than fake love. Mommy taught me that. I never responded to the letter. Neither did they send another one. On the 1-year anniversary of Sarah's death, Emma and I planted a cherry tree in the backyard. Sarah had always wanted one. She'd talked about how beautiful they'd be in spring, how we could have picnics under the blossoms. Emma wrote a letter and we buried it at the base of the tree, a time capsule to open when Emma turned 18. I don't know what she wrote. She said it was between her and her mom, but as we stood there in the backyard, dirt under our fingernails and tears on our cheeks, watching the sun set through the bare branches of Sarah's tree, Emma looked up at me and said, "Mommy knew, didn't she? She knew who would show up and who wouldn't." "How do you mean?" "The insurance money. She made sure it went to us, not to them. She knew they'd try to take it. She protected us even after she was gone." I'd never thought about it that way, but Emma was right. Sarah had set up that policy specifically listing Emma and me as beneficiaries. She'd discussed it with Jennifer Wu years ago, had made sure everything was ironclad. Maybe she hadn't known she'd die at 33 in a grocery store, but she'd known her in-laws well enough to protect her daughter from them even after death. "Your mom was the smartest person I ever knew," I told Emma. "She still is," Emma replied. "She's still taking care of us." 2 years later, Emma and I are okay. Not perfect, not healed, but okay. We still miss Sarah every single day, still set a place for her at Sunday breakfast, still talk to her cherry tree like she might somehow hear us, but we've built a life, a good life, with Sarah's parents as involved grandparents, with Jennifer as family, with a circle of people who showed up when things were hard and stayed. The insurance money? It's in a trust for Emma's education, managed by Jennifer. I haven't touched a penny except to pay for Emma's therapy and for the cherry tree and for the annual donation we make to the pediatric oncology ward where Sarah worked. My parents never reached out again after that one letter. I heard through mutual acquaintances that they'd moved to Arizona, started over somewhere no one knew their story. Rebecca blocked me on all social media. I heard she works in real estate now, far away from PR. And that's fine, because Emma was right from the beginning. We knew who our real family was, not the people who shared our blood but disappeared when we needed them. The people who showed up, who stayed, who loved us without needing something in return. That's family. Sarah knew it, Emma knew it, and now I know it too. The letter Emma wrote, that letter that went viral, that got printed in think pieces about toxic family dynamics, that became a cautionary tale about grief and greed, still sits in her important papers folder. Sometimes I take it out and read it. Remember that day. Remember watching my 8-year-old daughter stand up to people twice her age and tell them exactly who they were. Please don't come back until you love us more than dollars. They never came back, and honestly, we're better off for it. Sarah would be proud of Emma's strength, of the boundary we held, of the family we chose instead of the family we were given. And that's all that really matters. That's all that ever mattered.